Hello and welcome. When asked the question, who is the one single man who committed the greatest crimes against humanity, one may be tempted to mention Adolf Hitler of Germany. But I'm sorry to burst your bubble. There was once a man that lived in Europe that committed heinous crimes against humanity that was even far more than what Adolf Hitler did in Germany. This man is King Leopold II. Most of these crimes are not known by many people. And the reason why the media does not talk about it, and it is not in many history books, is because these crimes were committed against poor, low-ranking black Africans in the Congo. This video is not for racial profiling or to undermine or to underrate the suffering of many Jews under the hands of Adolf Hitler and his Nazi government, but it is to bring to light and to recount the history, the suffering of the many people that died, lost arms, were raped and tortured in the Congo just because of their natural resources. My name is Gideon. In this particular channel, we tell stories about people and places and how these stories affect our daily lives. If you are interested in this content, why don't you grab a seat, sit down, relax as we begin. If you are new to this channel, click on the subscribe button, click on the notification bell, leave a comment on the comment section, like and share this particular video. Let me know what you think in the comment section. In the early years of the reign of King Leopold II in Belgium, his heart desire was to have a colony of his own, a colony that could serve as his personal possession and as a personal source of wealth. Belgium, as at that time, practiced a constitutional monarchy. Although King Leopold was the king of Belgium, but he didn't have absolute power. Parliament still existed and King Leopold exercised his ceremonial functions. King Leopold set out his heart that he had interest in Central Africa. He wanted to also have a colony, but most of these colonies were already taken by powerful European countries like France, Germany, Britain, and the likes. But he wanted to also have a colony. How best will he be able to do that? How can he get into Central Africa if he doesn't convince his colleague Europeans who also had the colonialist agenda and also had an interest in exploration? He therefore convened two conferences. The first one was in Brussels and the second one was in Germany, Berlin. In the conference in Brussels, he tried to convince the other Europeans that his aim for trying to get to the Congo was to expose the place to light. He said he wanted to introduce civilization to the last places of the world that had not tasted how civilization was. He also convinced the Europeans that had gathered in these two conferences that his reason for going to the Congo was to go and propagate the gospel. He also spoke extensively of going there for humanitarian and for charity reasons, and he promised the other Europeans that when he got to the Congo, he will open up the place for business. Many of the Europeans that were gathered in these two conferences were impressed with the ambitions of King Leopold II. They did not know that behind all those lofty promises were the true colors of King Leopold. Not long after those lofty promises, his true colors were exposed. In an interview he granted the New York Times in 1906, King Leopold exposed his true colors by saying the following words: "When you are dealing with a race that has been cannibals for such a long period of time, you need to introduce measures that will shake up their laziness and introduce them to the positive aspects of work." Yes, King Leopold first of all referred to people of the black race as cannibals, and secondly, called all black people or people of the black race as lazy. And he therefore also even hinted that he was going to introduce what he called that time the force publique or the forced labor. When King Leopold was granted the permission to enter into Central Africa, he therefore was given the right to establish what was known as the Congo Free State. The only people he needed to consult was the Europeans who also had an interest in Africa. As a matter of fact, there is no record to indicate that the consent of the local people was ever sought. He did not consult any local chief, but he imposed his own rulership over the people of the Congo, and he therefore at that particular time entrusted all untapped natural resources as his own personal possession. It is worthy of note that the colony in the Congo was not for the country of Belgium, but for King Leopold as his own personal possession. That was how greedy he was. When he got to the Congo, his initial interest was in the ivory trade, because that was what he was dealing with. He traded in ivory and required that locals hunted down elephants and produced elephant tusks using whatever means that was available to them. He did not care. All what he wanted was that they meet their daily quota of ivory. To be able to achieve this, he implemented a forced labor. In order to make the forced labor to work, he needed to institute a system that was similar to the apartheid system in South Africa. In this particular case, he had a standing army comprising several black soldiers, and these soldiers were superintended by white officers. No black soldier could have the opportunity of rising through the ranks to become an officer, but the best they could do was to become low-ranking officials in the army. This army ensured that they enforced the laws of forced labor to satisfy the insatiable appetite of King Leopold for wealth. The invention of the bicycle brought a relief and elation to many people all around the world, because it provided a new means of transport. And bicycles needed to have tires, and these tires could be produced using latex. This latex or natural rubber was found in abundance in the Congo. Although the invention of the bicycle was celebrated globally, it brought untold hardship and suffering and pain in the life of Congolese. King Leopold of Belgium realized that the global demand for ivory was nothing as compared to the demand for latex or natural rubber. Therefore, his attention switched from using the locals to harvest elephant tusks to compelling them to harvest rubber sap that could be used as latex or natural rubber for the manufacturing of bicycle tires or tubes that will serve as a cushion when you are riding your bicycle. Harvesting latex or natural rubber is not a joke. It is so a difficult task and can even be life-threatening. So the villagers were hesitant to enter into this particular trade. And that was when King Leopold introduced drastic measures to compel the people to harvest the rubber whether they liked it or not. He introduced several measures to compel the locals to engage in this forced labor with or without their consent. First of all, he will go into an entire village and kidnap all the women and put them in confinement. They will keep them in confinement until their husbands are able to harvest and fulfill their daily quota of rubber supplies before their wives are released to them. Most of these women that were kidnapped ended up being raped by the same officers that were supposed to enforce this particular forced labor. Most of these women were raped in the open, and no remorse whatsoever was exhibited by the colonial powers. All that they cared for was that the indigents fulfilled their daily requirement of producing the natural latex or the natural rubber that they were required to produce. Another method was by the use of torture. King Leopold, through his torture, wiped out so many communities. He maimed a lot of people, amputated the arms of so many people, just to compel them to fulfill their part of harvesting the required quantity of natural rubber or latex. The soldiers that were serving in the army of King Leopold, his forced labor, were required to account for every single bullet that they were issued with. And when a soldier returned from duty, he was expected to provide a proof of the use of every single bullet that he was given. So most of these soldiers who killed entire villages needed to come back with the amputated arms of these individuals to really prove that when they went out to enforce this particular forced labor, they met resistance and they ended up killing those people. The colonial masters didn't care about people dying. What they wanted was a proof that the bullets were used efficiently. So many of these soldiers ended up using those bullets for hunting wild animals. And if a soldier used his bullet in hunting a wild animal, he would need to prove that he didn't use the bullet in a purpose other than for the enforcement of the forced labor. So they will go to villages, cut the arms of people or amputate the arms of living people, and sometimes leaving them with blood sprouting out of it, so that they could go to show that the arms that they were holding were actually the hands of dead people. But in fact, they were actually the hands of living people. But because they needed to provide proof of the use of their bullets, they will go hunting and killing and maiming people in the name of enforcing forced labor. This is a boy called Mpongi. Mpongi had his one hand and one leg cut off by a soldier when his village failed to fulfill their daily quota of natural rubber. Meet Mola and Yola. Mola lost both his hands to gangrene. When he was tied so tightly, Yola also suffered a similar fate. A number of people tried to tell the world about the atrocities that were committed by King Leopold II, but the world simply could not believe it. The world was adamant to listen to their voices. One of the first people that tried to tell the world about the atrocities committed by King Leopold was George Washington Williams. This black American young man had heard about the humanitarian and the charity work that was done by King Leopold, because he told the Europeans in Brussels and in Berlin that he was going to the Congo for humanitarian work. So the entire world knew that King Leopold was doing a fantastic job in introducing civilization to those parts of the world that had not experienced civilization. So George Washington made up his mind that he wanted to get into the Congo to see this utopia system where everything worked perfectly. He was disappointed when he went to the Congo and realized that the Congo was a living hell. It was the exact opposite of what King Leopold promised he was going to do when he went to the Congo. George Washington, however, could not live long enough to tell the stories of what he saw in the Congo, because he was hit by tuberculosis and he died few years later. An English author known as E.D. Morrell, who also engaged in a lot of exploration and missionary work, later realized that King Leopold was benefiting immensely from forced slave labor, and he was benefiting from the use of heinous methods to get the mobilization of the natural resources that he needed to enrich himself. So he teamed up with other missionaries and they organized an effective opposition against King Leopold II. It was hard for the world to believe the account of E.D. Morrell and the other missionaries that had gone to the Congo to see the suffering of the Congolese. But when he started circulating pictures of people with amputated hands and legs and dead people, and recounting harrowing stories of how people were raped in the open and how people were killed at will, these images seared themselves into the minds of many people. Two prominent authors, Arthur Conan Doyle and Mark Twain, also brought to the European audience most of these heinous crimes that were committed in the Congo. This began to gain traction in the European community. They started off by printing cartoons of people with chopped hands and chopped legs, and this started to get traction and the attention of the elite in society in many of these European countries. This got to the attention of the Belgium state, and Leopold's shame now became Belgium's shame, and the state of Belgium became worried of the international reputation that the actions of King Leopold was bringing upon them. It is worthy of note that the state of Belgium was not concerned about the human rights abuse and the atrocities that were committed by King Leopold. What they were concerned about was their image internationally and how their reputation was being soiled. So the state of Belgium entered into a negotiation to buy the colony from King Leopold, and it now became a state-owned colony instead of it being the personal possession of King Leopold II. It is worthy of note that even at this particular point in time, the chopping of hands and the chopping of legs, however, ceased, but forced labor still continued, and the massive exploration of natural resources did not stop and continued unabated, because the country of Belgium still continued to benefit from the loot of the colonial system. One will be shocked and amazed when they walk today in the 21st century into a confectionery shop in one of the most populous cities in Belgium, known as Antwerp, to see that a confectionery shop, or a shop that produces sweets, is producing chocolates in the shape of human hands. Not white human hands, but black and brown human hands. Yes, just similar to the hands of the local Congolese that were amputated and chopped off because of their inability to produce their quantity of rubber that they were expected to produce. When confronted with this particular fact, the mayor of Antwerp tried to explain away the reason why his town or his city still produces chocolate in the shape of black Congolese that had their hands chopped off. He said that it was meant to celebrate a local hero who rescued the city of Antwerp from the hands of a monster that chopped the hands of indigents. But the question one will ask, that if the monster was chopping the hands of indigents of Antwerp, were the hands of these locals of Antwerp not white? Why are the indigents of Antwerp not manufacturing chocolate in the shape of white hands, but instead doing them in the shape of black and brown hands? And that calls to question. And it is really unfortunate that even today, this still goes on. And you can go into a shop today in Belgium and buy a chocolate in the shape of a human hand, just similar to the atrocities that were committed in the Congo. It is worthy of note that at that particular time, many Europeans saw Africans as subhuman. Yes, they did not see Africans to be up to the level of human beings, and therefore did not need to be treated with that kind of respect or dignity whatsoever. And that is why in 1894, King Leopold II imported 183 black Congolese into Belgium. His aim was to let them serve in an exhibition in what he called human zoos. This occurred in no mean town than the populous city in Belgium known as Antwerp. That is the same Antwerp that they manufactured chocolate in the shape of black hands. Yes, akin to the black hands of the Congolese that were cut off during his escapades in the Congo. When King Leopold imported these 183 black Africans into the Congo, 8 of them died in transit due to the manner in which they were transported. And when they died, it was no big deal. Most of them were buried in unmarked graves, and he imported even another batch to replace those that had already died, and still continued to exhibit them in what he termed as the human zoos. Locals and travelers who went to Belgium will go, pay money, or throw in banana into these black Africans to elicit a reaction. And that was how they kept operating these so-called human zoos. As recent as 1958, many Europeans still thought that Africans existed for the amusement of Europeans, and that is why King Leopold imported 183 families from the Congo, uprooted them from their roots, and brought them all the way to Belgium and established what he called mock African villages. He wanted his country people to see how miserable these slaves were living. This was just 2 years before the Congo gained independence from Belgium in what they termed Expo 58. There are even several photos to prove that there were several petting zoos where people paid money to get into a zoo and to pet a black African. Belgium of today enjoy so many public works that were paid for by the blood, the sweat, and the toil of many Congolese who are no more existing. Many of them have lost their lives through barbaric and inhumane methods. After independence in 1960, the Congo elected its first prime minister in the person of Patrice Lumumba. This gentleman spoke about genuine economic independence from Belgium. But as you will have it, Belgium connived with the United States of America, and they succeeded in the assassination of this promising young African leader. When Patrice Lumumba was executed in this barbaric manner, his remains were decimated and dissolved in acid. Nothing of Patrice Lumumba could be retrieved so he could be given a befitting burial. It was recently discovered that an artificial tooth that he wore was recovered from the acid in which his body was dissolved in. And this tooth was therefore brought back to the Congo. And this was the only thing left of that particular vibrant young man who preached economic independence from Belgium. Belgium has shamed itself by being too slow to reckon itself with its past. We all know it is impossible to bring back the dead or to undo the pain of the ancestors of several Congolese that were amputated, raped, or tortured. But they can always have an opportunity to apologize, to come clean, and to accept the fact that they were responsible for the pain and the suffering of many individuals in the Congo. But they wouldn't do that. Belgium today is the capital of the European Union. What moral right would the European Union have to talk about crimes committed against humanity in Ukraine by Russia when these same things occurred in the Congo? Why would they continue to maintain their capital in that particular country with such a dark history? In the meantime, Antwerp, the most populous city in Belgium, still continues to produce chocolate in the shape of black human hands. Yes, resembling the hands of Congolese that were maimed and cut short by the forced labor of King Leopold II. I know you've learned a lot from this particular story. Let me know what you think about it in the comment section. If you are new to this channel, why don't you click on the subscribe button and the notification bell so that we can bring to you stories of this nature the next time we come on board. Thank you so much for your time, and see you again next time. May we continue to hold humanity to our hearts. God created all human beings equal, whether they are white, they are black, they are Caucasian, or whatever their colors may be. May God help us to be able to hold humanity first before anything else. This is the end of our video, and see you again next time. Bye bye.